Well, welcome back to the Hotel Orloff. It's June 14th, 2023, Wednesday morning. Sad news, very sad news. John Romita has passed away. Apparently it must have been on Monday, but it looks like the news is just breaking this morning or last night. I just noticed it about an hour ago. So he was 93, and of course, he was a fantastic artist, and his art is the way, I guess most of us visualize Spider-Man. Steve Ditko created Spider-Man, but I think when you see Spider-Man toys and products at stores, you're going to be seeing what's basically John Romita's art, and he could draw like nobody, man. And so that's incredibly sad news. I'd like to thank Todd E. Walnuts for shouting me out or whatever. He put me on some kind of timeline showcase on his YouTube channel, and I've gotten some subscribers. I don't know how many or came from where, but all of a sudden I seem to have gotten a little mini explosion of subscribers, and I think it's probably due to that. He's very complimentary, and he's got a great channel as well. And anyway, yesterday I was looking at creepy and eerie magazines from Warren Publications in the 60s and 70s and very early 80s, but by then they weren't worth really bothering with. Really, all the Warren magazines took a nosedive when Star Wars came out. I'm not knocking Star Wars. I love Star Wars, the real Star Wars, the original 3 movies. But when Star Wars came out in 1977, it was wonderful, life-changing. But monster magazines, in order to get on that gravy train, started to try to be more science fiction, and and all the ads in the back of Warren magazines for monster toys all started to be for Star Wars toys, and it just took away the magic and the fun of that monster craze that started in the late 50s and went all through the 60s into the 70s, but then pretty much died in 77. Monster Times, one of the great monster magazines, was actually like a tabloid, like the old Rolling Stone. It lasted from 72 until summer of 76. It didn't quite make it to Star Wars, but Famous Monsters was not the same. And then what really killed Famous Monsters is when the slasher movies started coming out, like Friday the 13th and everything. And then everybody was into gore films, and everyone went over to Fangoria. Anyway, we're looking at Creepy magazine, Eerie, which was an attempt to bring back the feeling of reading the EC comics in the early 50s. I guess this is where I left off yesterday, is it? Yeah, I think so. Creepy. I'll go through these magazines, see how much I can show in one episode. This is issue 38 from March of 71. That's about the time I started to see these magazines on the newsstand, around that time. This is May of 71, so that's the end of my... Man, May of 71, that's like the end of my kindergarten year. But I was seeing these on the newsstand. May of 71. Oh, I've got another copy of that issue. See, the thing is, Here's September of 71, so that's the beginning of first grade. Actually, this would have come out right before first grade started. You think, how do you know exactly what grade you were in? And it's like, how do you just have this photographic memory? No, it's actually very easy, because I started first grade in 1971. I started second grade in 72, third grade in 73, and like that. So I can easily, so third grade, if it's the beginning of 1974, you know, I know, okay, that's the end of third grade. And it's, you know, that's just how I do it. I think I'm seeing what started hurting my back yesterday when I was doing this video is leaning over. Oh, I think I need to get these boxes up higher than, yeah, you know what I could actually do? This is Creepy 41, by the way. Why don't I get down lower instead of getting the boxes up higher? That could work. Let's see. So how are you guys doing this Wednesday morning? Last night I was watching Trump's speech, and then I saw that Night Tiger was doing a live stream during Trump's speech, I guess, so I started watching his live stream this morning. Yeah, there's a lot of people on there. I'm about an hour into that. Okay, let's try getting down here. Whoa. Will this work? I think it'll be easier on my back. Okay. Let's figure out a way to make this camera stay. Actually, I probably should put this light back up here. I should have done all this planning before the show, but oh well. Okay, yeah, I think this will work better. Okay, yeah. How about that? My back's still hurting. I don't think it's helping. Oh well. What a shame. Let's see. Just a moment, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. Now what the heck are you wanting? You want me to show this? Creepy. Okay, so creepy. Okay. Okay, Creepy 42 from November of 1971. Okay, this lighting's pretty good. Getting down on the floor has some benefits. March 1972, they used this painting on these polyester t-shirts they used to sell at the 70s, like at Montgomery Ward. I never had any of those Warren t-shirts, but I could tell they were very uncomfortable and would make you sweat horribly. Meyer Greenblatt confirmed that because he actually had some of those shirts. Here's May of 1972, so this is the end of my first grade year. See, they've got the back issue ad for Creepy, all the back issues you could get. Creepy 48, and this is October of 72. So this is second grade now. It's in first grade I was living in Heidelberg, Germany. Second grade I was living in Hampton, Virginia, which at that time seemed like a nice community to me. But I see now that it is not a nice community. I don't think so. Because the school I went to, they've closed. It's always a bad sign when they close a school. It means things have gotten really bad. Back then it seemed very cool. It's the back issue. This is the incredible special issue. It's number 48. I'm not sure why it's a special issue. Maybe it's a anniversary. It wouldn't be the 10th anniversary because this magazine doesn't go back to 1962. 48's not really an anniversary number. That would be more like 50. Yeah, I don't know. But that way you don't have to pay for a cover. You can just print some cover. I always liked when they showed the old covers, but obviously they're not having to pay an artist that issue. This is November of 1972. It's got a little bit of I don't know what you call that, little shadow that you get from when it was stacked up, from people smoking, or is it just from the light exposure or dust? I don't know. Anyway, I remember seeing this cover in second grade. And I really remember seeing this cover. Now see, here's a real anniversary, the 50th anniversary special issue. So Uncle Creepy's there at a party. He's got Vampirella there, Frankenstein. He's got Cousin Eerie there. He's got Dracula there. Frankenstein probably represents Famous Monsters magazine, and Vampirella had her own magazine. And you got the Mummy in the background there. I just noticed that. And Dracula had his own feature in Eerie, as I recall. This is another issue I recall very clearly. They had a color section in this. I have 2 copies of that. So first we gave you Creepy, the first magazine of illustrated horrors. Then along came Eerie with his own brand of terror and suspense. Next we unleashed Vampirella to triple your heartbeat with her own bewitching tales. And now we bring you the most exciting new book in the history of modern comic art, Dracula. And what Dracula was a European art that they bought and packaged. And here's Creepy 52. It's not in a bag. It's the previews of the next issues. Let's take a look. And you can see it's very European looking art. Okay, let's turn off this ceiling fan. It's blowing things around. Creepy 52. We're in April of '73, so second grade is coming to a close. The books you could get. That book there. Oh man, I'm really messing up my back. I gotta get over closer to the camera. That book there is an amazing history of comics, and I highly recommend you find that book on eBay or whatever. Comics by Les Daniels. That's a book that's very sought after by EC comic collectors because it reprinted in color EC comic stories, and that's how a lot of people first discovered EC. Is through that book called Horror Comics of the 1950s. It was all EC in it. The ads in the back, of course, great. You get a Cousin Eerie and Uncle Creepy mask. Record albums, horror-related, were available. All these are Super 8 or 8mm films that you could get. They would last about 7-8 minutes long. Some of them would be silent. I think they were probably all silent. They were $7 each, which was a lot of money. A lot of money. I mean, this magazine cost 75 cents. And a magazine like this today would be $7, $8. So that gives you a sense of how money has changed. But I would pore over these and look at each individual picture. And I hadn't seen, really, at that point in second grade, I hadn't seen any of these movies. I think in second grade I saw Seventh Voyage of Sinbad on television. That blew my mind. But I would just dream about these movies, you know, just looking at the little pictures and reading the descriptions. All kinds of stuff. Posters you could get. Get the 6-foot-tall Vampirella poster. By this point in the 70s, the art didn't look as much like EC Comics. It started to look more European and very, I mean, that just does not look like EC Comics in any way. This story doesn't either. The 60s creepy and eerie magazines were more made to look like EC, but by the 70s, it looked more European, except you didn't really know it was European. As a kid, you didn't know this is European art. You just knew it was just like, it was different than the art you'd see in a regular 4-color comic book from Marvel or DC. It was a different style. A very different way of drawing. It's not that it's bad, it's just very, very different. More, I don't know, mod or, I don't know. So, Creepy, we're already into 1973, is, visually it doesn't immediately remind you of EC Comics by this point. But that was its originally it did. Okay, let's get this back in here. Now, at a certain point, an amazing artist came along, Richard Corbin, who'd started in Underground Comics. And when he started doing art for these magazines, it just blew my mind. Creepy 55, August of 73. That means I was about to go into third grade, August of 73, so that would have come out in June of 73. We were just in the process of packing, getting ready to move back to my hometown of San Antonio, where I would live from 1973 to 75. See, there's some Richard Corbin art. There's more Richard Corbin art. It's unlike anything you've ever seen. There's no other artist like him. He uses airbrush extensively. It gives it a cartoonish but realistic look. It's very strange, like almost like a 3D rounded effect. And his mind was just incredible. This is Creepy 59, Christmas cover. Creepy 64. This cover, they had the cover, but they didn't have a story to go with it, so they hired different people to come up with a story to go with this. Kind of like Roger Corman sometimes would have a poster made for a monster movie, and then he would have someone make a movie based on that poster painting that was already commissioned. And that's what they did. It says, a spaceman, a monster, a god, or a ghoul? Who is the tormented, decaying man? Super special issue, 7 exciting stories telling the tale of this rotting horror. So there's just different versions, people coming up with, what is this? What is this guy? And they did that more than once. I remember in the late 70s, probably around 77 or so, they had a cover with a bunch of gorillas holding spears, and the whole magazine was just another copy of the same issue. The whole cover was, whole issue was just different versions of stories about what those gorillas were. Okay. Creepy 65, September 74. This is beginning my 4th grade year, so obviously I'm missing some issues here. I know that when I was living in San Antonio, I couldn't find Warren magazines anywhere, any of the stores that, and see, by this point, they're real heavily sword and sorcery, competing with Marvel. I mean, if I just showed you that, you might think it's a cover of Savage Sword of Conan. I got 2 copies of that issue. Then we come to Creepy 66. This cover has always mystified me because it's like he's cutting someone's head off, but where's the body? It's like was the head just there on that block and he just like cutting part of its neck off? It's just like, that's the thing I can't figure out. I'm not disputing that it's a wonderful painting. It's just, I've never, like, what? Where's the body? And you see there's a bunch of heads on sticks in the background. Charming, that's 66. 69, now we're in February of 75. That's the latter part of my 4th grade year. And it's an adaptation of different stories by Edgar Allan Poe, so they're being very literate. They had another magazine that was out for a while called Comics International that was in all color, and it was all Richard Corbin stories printed in color, and it was great. And I've got that magazine somewhere, but where, I don't know. It might be in this box. I am really troubled by, now I saw Higgy Pop got an AOK of the All-Star Comics when they brought the Justice, All-Star Comics back in the 70s, and that first one, I think it was 58, and they had the first Power Girl, and I bought that comic off the newsstand. It's been in my comic collection for years. Now I can't find it. There's been no one in here to take it. It disappeared. I couldn't find it when I still lived in Texas. I'm just wondering, did I accidentally put it into a box of magazines, but it's not with my other All-Star Comics? I can't, I'm like to the point where I'm just going to buy another copy because it's driving me crazy. And it was something I really loved. And here's Creepy 82, which I just got recently from Gotham City Comics. Here's Creepy 83. They've reprinted the caveman painting from the 60s. And then they did several sports issues. This is the first of them. I remember buying this. Oh, here are the shirts I was telling you about. You can just look at these shirts and tell how uncomfortable they are if you know about 70s materials. And they were just random paintings taken from different Warren magazines, and just that they'd slap a title on. Now, we know that was a cover of Creepy, but they put Famous Monsters on it. Anyway, this was I don't know. I wonder what would have happened if you'd just worn that shirt to school, and probably nothing. I'm sure the teachers would have raised their eyebrows. There's their spread of Creepy back issues. I remember buying this issue off the rack at the PX. This one has a Richard Corbin story about a mummy that plays football. There was always a page column in these mid to late 70s by a guy named Joe Branticelli that had done an comic magazine called Inside Comics a few years before, but he was a comic book critic, and he would offer his caustic opinions on comics. And he was kind of like a Harlan Ellison type, kind of a hard-boiled, kind of sarcastic guy. He didn't like, he really got upset when Marvel had Kiss do that publicity stunt where they dumped their blood into a vat of red ink that was going to print the Kiss comic magazine. This is a Planet Mars special issue. And as I recall, there's a Bernie Wrightson story that's a play on John Carter, Warlord of Mars, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see if I can find that. Yeah. It's Warmonger of Mars, and it's actually Wally Wood. No, Wally Wood did the story. Ralph Reese did the art. So it's basically John Carter. It's a parody of John Carter, kind of done in that EC Mad style. But you know, by this point, these magazines were pretty much R-rated. I mean, they would sell these magazines to kids because they didn't really know what they were. They just figured they were comics. But I remember reading them and sometimes just feeling guilty. Like, should I own this? It's like the language was they would use curse words. There would be... It wasn't, you know, the EC comics had violence, yes, but these would have more, and sometimes they'd go pretty far. There was a Neal Adams story. Oh, this is nice. There was a Neal Adams story where about a sniper that was shooting people randomly from a building, and it was the artwork was, I thought, very sadistic. I don't know if that was in Creepy or Eerie, but I remember looking at that and thinking, wow, this is just really twisted. This is sick. You know, here's like a kid shooting another kid in the head. You know, I just thought, I don't know. It wasn't that I was puritanical, and I love these books. It just, I don't know. Sometimes I just thought, this is a little sadistic. And I don't know, it just felt like they went too far. And then later, when Heavy Metal came out, they went even farther and put out a magazine called 1984, and it was ridiculous. They went ridiculously over the top, and to me, that's what kind of was the death knell of Warren, because it was just like, the artwork's great, but this is juvenile. This is really perverse and wrong. 1984, and then it became 1984, as I recall. Either the estate of George Orwell was litigious, or it got close to 1984 on the calendar, and they wanted it to sound futuristic, so they changed it to 1994. But if you see a 1984 or 1994 comic, this is the gorilla one I was telling you about, where they have a bunch of different stories trying to explain who these apes are. And see, by this time, Close Encounters of the Third Kind was out. Star Wars was out. The magazines were getting more raunchy. And just didn't feel right to me as a... How old would I have been? 12, 13. I just felt like... sometimes you felt like you needed to take a shower afterwards. Here's Creepy 94. But I love the artwork. Yeah, that when Star Wars came out, they had this special Star Wars issue. They cashed in on Star Wars a lot. You can even get underwear of famous monsters and stuff, and eerie and creepy. I don't know anyone that ever had that. But the ads in the back are still for monster stuff. They have all the Star Trek paperbacks at the time. I meant to do some research this morning. I was thinking about this. How much of a, you know, like see this alien, but then it has these weird boobs, and I felt wrong about this magazine. I don't know. Oh, didn't I just see that in the one I I swear this is a reprint of something we just saw. I think I just saw that monster in another issue. Anyway, see, they're starting to get into aliens, right? And look on the back, Close Encounters. They actually put the... It was kind of surprised at the end of Close Encounters what the aliens look like. But they just put it right on the front cover of this special magazine they put out. But see, they were getting into, let's do space aliens. That's what's going to sell. Still have monster ads in the back, but they increasingly become more all Star Wars stuff. But here they still have Planet of the Apes. 8mm home movies you could get. They're putting out The Spirit at that time. That was great. Oh, what I was wanting to research is Forrest J. Ackerman, who was the editor of Famous Monsters of Filmland, another one of these Warren magazines. In the 60s, when Star Trek was on for 3 years, Star Trek was never on the front cover of Famous Monsters. I don't remember them ever even covering Star Trek in Famous Monsters. And you say, well, it was science fiction. It wasn't. No, there were monsters in Star Trek. And the other magazines, yeah, I thought the art has to be Alex Nino. He was a Filipino artist, I believe. Definitely a Filipino artist. It's just that there were all the, as I told you yesterday, there were all these Spanish artists from Spain, and then there were artists from the Philippines that had Spanish names, but you can kind of tell the difference in their artwork. What the heck? Oh, anyway, Castle Frankenstein, a rival magazine of Famous Monsters, covered they had Star Trek on their cover 2-3 times. They had features in the magazine, and I know that Forrest J. Ackerman had been an aspiring science fiction writer. He'd been an agent for science fiction writers and been a science fiction fan. Primarily, that was his area of nerddom, was science fiction. And back to 1929 with the Pulps, when he was a kid. This is 97, where they reprint this from an earlier issue of, I don't know if it was Eerie or Creepy. And see, this Eerie yearbook I just got, see, it reprints that. I think it's the 3rd time they've used this Frazetta painting. And anyway. So my question is, what did Forrest J. Ackerman have something against Gene Roddenberry? Did he not like him personally? Did they have some feud? I just would like to know, because just historically, I just like to know what happened. Why Famous Monsters just kind of ignored the fact that this amazing science fiction show was on television. That's a Bob Larkin cover. He did a lot of Marvel art. You don't see him on Creepy and Eerie that much. Here's Creepy's 100th issue. Here's Creepy 101 with a wonderful Richard Corbin painted cover. Well, everything he did was painted, but look at that. At a certain point, this artist started drawing, and I saw his art on different ones, Creepy, Eerie, Vampirella. This artist, I don't like his style, whoever he is. He looks like a Satan worshiping. It's kind of like devil kind of art. Creepy 103. See, they're just not the same magazine it used to be. And then they have a special robot issue, and trust me, that's because Robots is bigger than the title Creepy, because they're trying to cater to the Star Wars crowd. And then Creepy 105. I think that's a reused painting. I don't think that's a new painting. Yeah, they kind of lose their focus. Here's Creepy 107. But this time the Lord of the Rings movie was coming out. That was the animated Ralph Bakshi movie. Here's Creepy July of 1979. So that's That's like right. That's right as I'm going into 10th grade. There's this Dracula cover I think is very badly painted. I don't like that. I don't like his fingers. I just don't like it. But I'll tell you what was great. This cover's great with the Richard Corbin vampire Dracula guy. And then they did this special issue with all Bernie Wrightson art. It's all reprints, but it's really cool to have a bunch of cool Bernie Wrightson stuff together. And then they changed the logo, you know, to this crummy logo. And this one I got at Half Price Books right before I moved here. And they just throw a really, I need to get this out of the bag because I'll bag it at a future date because I don't want my book up against that kind of cardboard. And it's trash, you know. But see, by then all the ads are Star Wars. It's not that I don't like Star Wars. I just like see everything Star Wars, Space Shuttle. This no. Okay, Drew is licking the back of. Luckily, it's in my lar. Drew, do you need to go outside? Hey, Drew, do you want to go on a walk? We might have to walk, Drew. She is needing to go on a walk. Okay. Anyway, I don't know. Creepy. This was right before the end. Warren didn't make it past the. It was just a bad time. Like I said, Star Wars killed monster magazines. It killed monster stuff, monster toys. Everything became space toys. And although I dearly love Star Wars, I know that it created problems in what I loved, because I saw it happen. Okay, so let's see what we can do for Drew. Come on, Drew. Come on, Drew. It's early morning on Wednesday. It's, what time is it? Let's see if she ate her breakfast. Let's see, it's not even, it's 9:45. Yes, she did eat her breakfast. Good. Oh, and she probably does want to go for a walk. All right. Where we're going for a walk, ladies and gentlemen. Get my shades on. Yeah, I'll tell you, where's the leash? Oh, there they are. It was definitely, what killed everything that I loved. First of all, it's weird when something you love kills things that you love, but Star Wars killed monsters, and I collected monster stuff. And then slasher movies was the next thing that was the death knell of magazines like Famous Monsters. And then from there, what killed comic books was video games. And I don't really care much about comic books after, after about, you know, when video games started to come in with Atari 2600, you start seeing all those ads in the comics. The comics, to me, became less interesting. some yard work out here. Still need to buy a lawnmower though. Yeah, that's basically it. You know, I love the 1960s and 50s aesthetic. I love the monsters and the heroes of that time period. And I guess the other thing that killed everything was comics becoming really dark, because everyone figured we want to be like Watchmen or The Dark Knight. And those Warren magazines honestly did go too far. I mean, they weren't, you know, so they were written for adults and all. I call BS on that. They were written for adolescents, 12, 13, 14-year-olds. That's who they were aimed at when they were first published. Just look at the ads in the back. I mean, I may imagine up through college age maybe read them. I should have said BS, sorry. Okay. All right, come on in. Looks like a cat has been puking. I'm gonna have to, yeah, do some cleaning here. Okay, amazing. All right, back to the world of creepy and eerie. Yeah, okay, so if you want to buy creepy and eerie, man, I mean, there was beautiful art. I'd say stick to maybe prior to 1977, because rinsing off my hand. Let's switch shoes. I've been noticing everybody on YouTube, maybe it's a sign of the apocalypse, but everyone's getting more frantic, like they've just had 8 cups of coffee. And I've seen a few episodes of Comic Tom. He's probably one of the biggest YouTube comic book people. He's like always frantic, and it's like everyone now I see normal people starting to act really frantic. Like it's like, gosh, I just woke up. This show's a little too energetic for me, you know. And people showing books like, look, 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 look. Look what I got, look what I got, look what I got. It's like, holy smoke, calm down, man. Take a chill pill, as the youngsters say. As people get crazier, I'm just going to get calmer and calmer. Yes, indeed. Yes, this is a Graphic Man masterpiece here. He combined this John Romita romance cover, because she looks a lot like Mary Jane. He puts Spider-Man in the background. It makes it a Spider-Man cover. This original art for Our Love Story number 27 is owned by Glenn Danzig, the Misfits founder. I saw him standing in front of a wall of original art that he owns, and there was that, oh, that's that Graphic Man cover. I got to talk to Graphic Man and convince him, pay him some money or something to get me a Prince Namor, the Sea Monkey cover. I got a special spot saved for that amazing mashup of a cover. Yes, indeed. So, anyway, I was looking at this, noticing this horrible damage on the back, which probably caused by the Half Price Books Antifa Democrat employee that put this into the bag because they don't care about this. Oh, that's a Republican magazine. Anyway, Creepy was done. Why did they change the logo? It looks terrible. See, by now it's like, get your Close Encounters t-shirt, UFOs, Buck Rogers. It's like it all went from monsters to space stuff. Super 8. Well, it's well, you can get Logan's Run. That's Empire Strikes Back, Star Wars. There's still a little bit of EC reprint stuff up there, but and see this, the art by this point looks nothing like EC. And really, who is this artist? Yes. Mike Sains. Okay. Here's a Sword and Sorcery story. I like this art. I know this artist. This artist is it Alcala? Yeah, Alfredo Alcala. Very great. And that almost looks like, could it be? Yes. Illustrators Carmine Infantino and Alex Toth. So there's some good art in here for sure. Of course, it could be reprinted. Sometimes it's like, oh, there's good art. Well, yeah, because that's reprinted from earlier issues. I don't know. It's all Christmas stories, apparently, in this issue of Creepy. Anyway, I don't like that logo on Creepy 125. And Creepy 131, they just recycle completely a cover from earlier. And they went back to the original logo, at least. But like I was saying, they start recycling these Frazetta paintings from earlier. But when you get to Creepy 132, this is really one of the best covers. I remember buying this at the 7-Eleven. Look at this. This is one of, man, if I had a comic wall, this would be on it. This is Richard Corbin. I hate the UPC code. But look at the beautiful colors of this monster dinosaur lizard. This is a great story in the comic too. And this cave girl kind of, this was great. October of '81. I would recommend you get Creepy 132. This is great. I'd say it's my childhood copy, but 81, man, I'm in high school at that point. October 81, I'm starting 11th grade. Yeah, I'm a junior. Okay, so 32. At some point after that, Creepy gets canceled. And then Creepy gets brought back. And I found this at Forum 303 Mall in the Century Bookstore. And it has a Richard Corbin cover, and this is Creepy 146, and this is very rare and valuable. It doesn't say Warren anymore, because what happened is I think James Warren got sick, like devastatingly sick, and maybe all of his stuff, his affairs got in bad disorder, and he later got better because he's still alive. I'm pretty sure he's still alive. And anyway, all his stuff to his, he didn't want it to happen this way, but it all got sold off, I guess, by creditors. And so someone, maybe this is Harris Publications, bought the name Creepy and Vampirella. But anyway, they tried to bring back Creepy. They've got a Richard Corbin cover. That's kind of horrible. There's a tombstone for Richard Corbin. That's how he signed the painting. But later, he actually, he did pass away just recently, about a year ago or something, or 2 years ago, I don't know. But anyway, that was a tragedy because he's so great. Anyway, this is the Resurrection issue, and I think, and the Vampirella issue that came back in magazine form is valuable too, and I bought that at that same store. Okay, so here we've got, I'll put the yearbooks at the end. Here's the 1968 yearbook. Some people like to put yearbooks like in with that year, you know, if they've got like a run of the Incredible Hulk, they'll put the Hulk yearbooks in with the, like, that year. I've never done that. I always put the yearbooks at the end. I think that's the way, I don't know if that's the way my comic shop, Lone Star Comics, which used to be my literal comic shop that I would go to, it was my local comic shop. I think that's the way they did it when they filed books in. They put all the yearbooks, the annuals, I mean, at the end of everything. But that's how I've always filed comic books. What they do in the 1968 yearbook is they reprint the best stories of 1968. Here's a Wally Wood story with Dan Adkins. See, these the original EC guys kind of got squeezed out in the 70s by these Spanish artists from over in Spain that would work cheaper. And some of the stories might have already been pre-existing stories that Warren bought that were published in Spanish magazines. Here's 1970 yearbook. Yeah, it was later in the 70s that they got more European looking. 1971 annual. This great Flash Gordon ad on the back for when they were reprinting these Flash Gordon comic strips in book form at that time. And then finally, here's the Creepy 1972 Spooktacular. And then an ad for these torture chamber model kits and the Vampirella model kit that look nothing like that. Okay, so that's pretty much, I think, all my Creepies, unless there's a few in another box somewhere that I'm not aware of. So let's get these Creepies back in, and then I'll show you some more of the Eries. So I think we still have some time. I deleted a few apps temporarily so I could have more recording time, and then once I record, I put the apps back on my phone. That's how clogged my phone is with stuff. Okay, so yesterday the Erie I was showing you was one I got in 72, 73. My dad let me buy it in Hampton, Virginia. It has a swamp creature on the cover, but it has a yellow background. Here it is. And see, at this point, they were kind of introducing a new character. Eerie. As I was telling you yesterday, there's that character Coffin I was telling you about. He kind of has a Billy Jack hat, and he has a missing eye, and he's kind of like a Jonah Hex, cross between Jonah Hex and Billy Jack, I guess. And they had a continuing feature with this werewolf, and they had a continuing feature with a mummy, and Dax the Warrior. They had, but they were continuing, so you'd have to get each issue like a Marvel comic, where the stories would continue from issue to issue like a soap opera. And they started doing that around this time, around 72, and by see the eerie exploits of Dracula, the Mummy, the Werewolf, and Dax the Warrior. So there were continuing stories. I saw eerie and creepy and famous monsters all the time when I was in 2nd grade, but by the time I was in 3rd and 4th grade in San Antonio, I couldn't find Warren magazines anywhere. And when I did find it, there's another copy of the same issue. I found that the eerie had become all continuing stories. See, it's and they introduce Hunter, the demon killer from the future here. No relation to Hunter Biden. And so when they would do this mummy story, and they'd always paint the Boris Karloff mummy on the cover. I guess Universal wasn't noticing. Here is number 54 of Eerie. And here it says at the bottom, the Mummy, Hunter, Shrek, and introducing Dr. Arceus. He was hanged, but he lives again. So they have these continuing features. One of them was The Spook. This is a super special issue with the adventures of Dax the Damned, which I think was a European strip. They later reprint Dax in the 80s, but they change all the dialogue. They just, so I think they just got this straight from Europe. Oh, here's a copy of that same issue that's not bagged. Oh, it's all destroyed. Look at how badly destroyed that is. See that? But we can look inside and see what it looks like. So at this point, Eerie is no longer supposed to look like Tales from the Crypt or Vault of Horror or Haunt of Fear. It's more, this is really more a hero book. And this, all these Dax the Warrior stories, now it's more, this is a really thick issue too. See how thick that is? This is like you're reading, this art is beautiful. It's like you're reading Savage Sword of Conan. But look at the intricate art here. It's a lot of fun. The artist, and this is all Esteban Maroto, which I pronounced Esteban Maroto for years. I'm thinking I'm going to ask my wife how to pronounce that properly in Spanish. This color story they put in the center. In the mid-70s, they put a lot of color stories in the center. See, there's that famous painting of, I don't think we've seen it yet, that was in one, well, did we see that? That was on the front cover of, was it Eerie or Creepy? But anyway. Yeah, beautiful stuff. Dax the Damned, Dax the Warrior, however you want to call him. That's issue 59. That was a pre-existing painting that they incorporated into that story. Now I'm wondering, where is that issue? I must have shown it to you yesterday. The one, I think it's called The Ghoul Queen. They used to sell posters of it. I know I've got it. Come on. Oh, here it is. It's Eerie 41. That's that painting. by San Julian. Okay. Oh, there's that coffin. Is that the same guy? No. This must be the... Is that the same guy? Now he's got missing all the skin around. He's outdoing Jonah Hex, man. He's got... Jonah Hex just had some skin melted from his upper lip down to his lower, and then some... But here he's like right down to the bone, scalped right down to the bone, all through his lower part of his face. I wonder if you could survive an injury like that and actually live with that much of the front of your skull exposed. Is that possible? I don't know. Of course, I'm asking if it's possible in a magazine called Eerie about monsters and stuff. So anyway, this has Richard Corbin art in it. It advertises at the bottom, Full Color Terror by Rich Corbin. They knew they had, that was their main artist. That was their guy in the 70s. They knew that Richard Corbin sold magazines, so they would advertise it on the cover. And for good reason. He's just one of the greatest artists of all time. I guess I have more than one. Oh, and then this character, Exterminator 1. This is an... They did have some cool characters. It just, you got to get, how many copies do I have of this issue? You've got to get all the issues in that time period to follow the story. But if you do that, then it's going to be fine. I'm just warning you, you pick up a random issue of Eerie, you might have trouble understanding what's going on. Here's the character, the Spook, firing a cannon at you. This is from April of '75, so this is towards the end of my 4th grade year. Here's June of 1975, issue 66. And here they're introducing El Cid, or is it pronounced El Cid? You know, there's a hero from, what, Spain? It's probably a story they just bought from them. There was even a movie with, what was it, Charlton Heston? Did he play that character? I don't remember. But, see, the art is very kind of psychedelic, Spanish, European looking, very Vampirella-like. Vampirella had a lot of European art. Who is this artist? Gonzalo Mayo. Gonzalo Mayo. He's pretty good. Sometimes the art it just depends on your mood. You got to get used to it. Yeah, these it's getting a little hot in here, man. It's because I turned the fan off. Eerie 66. Yeah, Toddy Walnuts was doing a story. He mentioned that he had shouted me out on one of his episodes. So I said, which one? And he said, I was looking at horror magazines. And so I watched that episode, and it was great. And he was showing Creepy and Eerie's. So that's one of the reasons. He's one of the people that was saying, show more of those. Okay. Yeah, that's the character Coffin. The other guy must have been another character. Well, I don't know. Maybe... See, Coffin is... See how he's like Jonah Hex? Half of his face is messed up. But, ooh, gosh. Yeah, sometimes they would do things that were so... I'm looking at an illustration on the back that's very questionable. There's some Alex Toth art. Alex Toth being the creator of Space Ghost and all of that. When it's so questionable, I don't even want to show it, It's yeah, here's that character. Yeah, I don't like that. Sometimes these magazines, like I said, could go a little farther than they should. This is the character Hunter 2. That's the best character that they created. See, they're trying to create superheroes for Erie. They're trying to turn it into a. Oh man. Here's a color. That's Bernie Wright. This is Bernie Wrightson Frankenstein prototype. It's like a Bernie Wrightson color story in the center. You know, Bernie Wrightson illustrated Frankenstein, but here it's just, he's calling it the Muck Monster, story and art. This is him, I think, practicing for that masterpiece that he did of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. But this certainly dates it here, this poster for Young Frankenstein, as being from September of '75. Okay, that's when I was going into 5th grade, so this really came out in the summer between my 4th and 5th grade, and that's about the time that Young Frankenstein came out. I love that movie. I even read the novelization. Did you know there was a novelization of Young Frankenstein? I have it here somewhere. I need to go through paperbacks. Charlton 66 is wanting me to go through and show paperbacks, so I should do that, since he sent me all these bags to put paperbacks in. He said, I was hoping if I sent you these bags that you go through the paperbacks and put your very favorite ones into the bags, then I get to see them. And I thought, well, okay, that's cool. So I got to do that. 768. Wait a second. Hold on a second. I was mistaken. I was mistaken. See this creepy 132? That's not the one to get. I showed you this a minute ago, and that's not the one that made. That was creepy 132, right, from 1981, all right? And I just see this is the one, Erie 90. This is where that they just reused the same cover, only, see, this is from about 1977. So yeah, this was the one that blew my mind. I was in 7th grade when this came out, and then I was in 11th grade when that creepy reprinted this. Get this one. This is the original printing of this story, and the cover, that's the one to get, Erie 90. Okay, I was thinking that was too late in the run for something good to appear like that. After the 80s started, these magazines were pretty much toast. The golden days were gone. Let's see, 62. 60, okay. All right. Here's issue 80, looking very much like a Savage Sword of Conan cover. If you don't see Erie, yeah, a couple copies of that. Oh, this was a great painting. This is from February of '77, issue 81, a reverse King Kong with Fay Wray. And then if you look really carefully, she's holding a little miniature King Kong in her hand. I think this was a painting that Frazetta had already done, and they just said, hey, can we use that? It's around the time that this devastatingly bad King Kong remake came out. Now, this is where Erie, when they were trying to create all these heroes, most, you don't remember them, but this character, the Rook, was a really great character. He was a time-traveling guy. He had a robot companion, and this guy over here was his great-great-great-grandfather that he rescued from the Battle of the Alamo. He was supposed to die at the Battle of the Alamo, but instead he just disappeared because the Rook, who was a time traveler, and he had a time machine that was shaped like a rook chess piece. I guess it's kind of like Doctor Who. I've never really watched Doctor Who, but you know, I know he has a phone booth as his device that traverses time and space. But it's great. And then he got his own magazine, and it was just spectacular. This is one of the great issues to get. It's all Richard Corbin art, which it says at the top, all Corbin super special. I remember buying this at Lone Star Comics back in 1977, 78, whenever it was 77 probably. We then followed that by this. That was a really great time period for Eerie. Here's issue 92 with a sports theme. This is issue 93 with a little vampire theme. Eerie 94. Here's Eerie 95 where he teams up with Vampirella. The Rook really was a cool character, really was. 96, it's MacTavish Robot Smasher. So they're trying to make it like Magnus Robot Fighter in Gold Key Comics. This is reprints of these stories by Richard Corbin. Corbin didn't do the cover, but inside it's Corbin art with this dinosaur storyline that's really great. Eerie 98. It's like another copy of that. See, the Rook started to get a lot of cover appearances. 99, and then later he got his own magazine. On the back, you could see they're putting out special issues trying to get you to buy reprints of science fiction stories from Creepy and Eerie, calling it Galactic Wars Comics. And this one is supposed to make you think you're buying a Lord of the Rings thing, because Lord of the Rings was coming out that Christmas, I think it was at Christmas, as an animated feature, and everyone was excited. Ralph Bakshi, it turned out to be not as exciting as people thought. But Lord of the Rings was coming out, and so they put out Ring of the Warlords, and they got stories from back issues of Creepy and Eerie that were kind of Tolkien-like, with little dwarves and, you know, people fighting with swords, and they put them all in this magazine, one shot. These are both one shots, by the way. Anyway, and they reused that painting of the Goblin Queen again that I just showed you. Eerie 100, you see it's a total superhero magazine at this point. They've got the Rook, Darklon. Darklon was this Doctor Strange kind of guy. See, it's all of their heroes. It looks just like, yeah, they became a superhero. Eerie became a weird superhero comic. Here's Hunter 2 Returns. I don't really like that painting, but see, they're trying to make it look like a stormtrooper from Star Wars. That's what they're trying to do, is sell to the Star Wars hungry kids. Here's Eerie 102. See, they're advertising. They also did a Lord of the Rings one-shot to cash in on that. 104, we're up at a 79. See, the painting doesn't look as good. Looks like real bad art on the side of a van or on a pinball back glass. Eerie 116. Eerie 117. We're getting towards the end. Eerie 119. It's a time of Battlestar Galactica. And that may be the end of my Eerie comics. I don't know what issue it ended with, but because here I go into my Eerie annuals. And this one is from 1971. Oh, and then I have some of my Rook magazines in the back. This is the... Was this the first... I think this was just a special that reprints a bunch of Rook stories. I don't think this was Rook #1. Or am I wrong? Yeah, I think that's what it was. Because Rook #1 has this beautiful... Look at that beautiful painted cover by Richard Corbin. The Rook. And then I don't have all the Rooks. Here's Rook number 2. I should have all the Rooks, but I don't. Rook number... See, now I got a Rook number 4. I'm missing number 3. But, you know, didn't have all the money in the world. Here's Rook number 6. Looks like maybe that's a Bob Larkin cover. Almost looks like that's a cover off of a Marvel magazine. And Rook number 9. Yeah, so I'm missing some issues. I don't know how long it went on, but the Rook legend lives on. The new master of time battles the evil Antichrist. I think I'd like to reread that issue. Yeah, this stuff's great. It just basically, when Star Wars came out, it created great damage to the Warren Empire. Because they started trying to be less space, more space and less monster. Also, the Warren magazines had a tendency to push the limits of taste, where it couldn't, if you had any inner glow of Christianity or anything, and weren't a total devil-worshipping kid listening to Black Sabbath, it makes you feel guilty sometimes reading these magazines, because they were, it's like, this is R-rated stuff, and they're selling it to kids. You kind of felt weird about it. I don't know, at least I did. But, but I see I don't have a very thorough collection. I probably have more than the average person that you'd meet in the mall, you know, than the average normal person. But to me, I have a very spotty collection, and not acceptable. Not acceptable. But, as I keep saying, there are people that all they did was buy comics. They didn't buy records or later CDs. They didn't buy anything but comics their whole life. And they should be expected to have everything. But I was buying too much other stuff. Where is my box lid for this? Oh, yes. No. Yes. It says Eerie Magazine and the Spirit. I moved the Spirit to another box. Maybe I should change that to the Rook. Yes, indeed. Look, that's how professional comic collectors do it. This, now it says the Rook. Okay, fantastic. Oh, what else can I show you? Oh, well, since these are out, I still have to file these. Let's put these over there. Well, we're looking at, okay, I told you yesterday that there is no Eerie number 1. It starts with Eerie number 2, and the reason for that is there was this other company making monster magazines. After Creepy became a hit, they started making monster comic magazines, and they called themselves Eerie Publications. So James Warren did a little ash can, little miniature comic, printed, I don't know, a few hundred copies, that was called Eerie. So he was able to copyright it, get it registered, so that company could not use the title Eerie as a comic, but they could, but anyway, this company is called Eerie Publications, that puts out these books. And I've known about them for years, and I've been buying them for years, but recently hipsters have become aware of them, and the value of them has gone up, because they're oh, those are so cool. And anyway, in the last 10 years, that's happened, where they've gone up in value. And these were far gorier. Well, the covers went a lot farther than Warren ever did. I know there was that one where he was chopping someone's head off, and sometimes they would do stuff like that. But, yes, he wasn't, Myron Foss, or Fass, however you pronounce it, the guy behind this company, wasn't beyond just reusing someone's title, Tales from the Crypt, which he couldn't do, so he had got a letter from a lawyer, probably, so he changed it to Tales from the Tomb with the next issue. But these are a lot of fun. But they were not, they were only in the sleaziest stores. As I was telling you in a previous episode, this kid at school got a copy of one of these magazines, and you know, he brought it to school, I think, or something, and people couldn't believe it. And he said he got it at I think he got it at Lone Star Drive-In, which was you know, there were the big stores like 7-Eleven and Stop and Go and whatever, but then there were these little independent mom and pop stands where they probably got these weirder magazines because they were cheaper, you know, than maybe cheaper distributor that distributed to scummy stores would have these. I mean, this would not be in a respectable store. I don't think so. Although some of the later ones, I remember seeing them at a bookstore in Pantego, Texas, but the one when they had covers like this, I don't know. And they were weird in that it was 1950s art. So you can tell that's 1950s art just looking at it. They would reprint, they'd get this old art, and then they'd add to it, you know, like maybe draw the saliva coming out of the mouth. They would get some white out, and very 1950s looking art. Sometimes it's new art, but they would add blood to it that was not there in the original 50s art, or not as much. Anyway, these are called Eerie Publications, and there's been some books put out about them in the last 10 years. And Tales of Voodoo. Sometimes they would really push it. Trying to find an example of that. Anyway, Tales of Voodoo. Dang, it's hot in here. Oh, this is a classic cover. I mean, they're insane. Insane, I tell you. Now, after a while, they got, I guess there are people that complained. So later on, when the monsters are always, you know, cutting each other apart on the cover, later on they made it where they were all robots, and instead of blood, you'd see little gears and things and screws falling out of them. But not yet here with Terror Tales. Terror Tales. Someone made a really great cartoon where they took these covers and animated them. You can see it on YouTube. And they used a 60s Halloween record, horror sound effects record from Johnson Smith maybe, a record that you could order from the back of a comic book. And they did, I forget the guy's name. He used to be a friend of mine on back in the MySpace days. But he did the animation. It's really cool. Sometimes they reuse the paintings over and over again. Yes, indeed. It's hard to find these in good shape because the type kid that would buy these magazines were like, not the type kid that would keep them in good condition. These weren't being bought by like church kids or something. I don't know what. I think I have 2 copies of this issue. Well, yes, this one, someone tried to sell it at a garage sale for 30 cents. Probably did sell it. That's a great cover. The werewolves and the vampires and the mummies do not like each other much on these covers. and are constantly impaling each other, biting each other. See, this is a little bit later, January 81, so they're trying to get a spaceship into the, and a planet in there because they want to get the Star Wars market too. See, that's how the space stuff influenced this stuff. Here's Witch's Tales from February of 1972. And again, like I tell you, I never saw these on the newsstands. I guess my parents didn't take me into places that would carry these kind of magazines. They were probably in the wrong part of town. Let's see. I don't know. You can tell me down below where if you saw these back then in those days. There's another one that was sold for 30 cents at a garage sale. Oh well. Is that all I got? Is that all I got? Could be all I got. Because then I go to Psycho, which was a different kind of, this was a more sophisticated magazine, as you can tell by the artwork. Oh, there's an ad for Hell Rider. Anyway, Psycho was a pretty cool comic. This is from Skywald Publications, which is another rival to Warren. See, Warren had started to have a lot of competition in the 70s. There were these magazines that, to an average idiot, they can't tell the difference between Psycho and Creepy and Eerie. They don't know it's done by a different company. And so these could take away from the profit margin of James Warren's Creepy, Eerie, and Vampirella. So he had to compete with them and one-up them and make sure he's... this is a cover. Now these, Psycho, I remember seeing, these were sold at the PX. So when I went with my parents to the PX, and I remember seeing this one. This one is from September of '73. So I saw this right as we moved to San Antonio. September of '73, that would have been like July of '73 when this was on the rack. That's just a beautiful painting. I love the colors. I guess that's supposed to be Dr. Phibes, the green guy. Looks like they messed up a little bit on the side of his face, but it's a beautiful painting. Man, if I had that painting, that would be just lovely to have in the living room. Psycho. More Psycho. And they had another magazine called Scream. This one, I remember my mother let me buy this when I was a kid. This particular issue was Psycho. I don't know what happened to that. I think this is one I bought later. This is not my childhood copy. Psycho number 17 from March of '74. That face, they've ripped that off from Picture of Dorian Gray. Here's Psycho number 19. An ad for Scream on the back. Here's a Psycho annual. Look at that nice painting on the back. Oh, that's Pablo Marcos. Did that. 1974 Psycho yearbook. See that cover on Psycho? Looks very much like an issue of, I think, Monsters Unleashed number 2 or 3 that had Frankenstein. It was the same artist too. This was one I remember seeing like it was yesterday. This is Scream magazine. I remember seeing that at the PX. Right next to the comics, they would have these magazines. These are acceptable for the military bases, but not those Eerie Publications ones. And again, when I say Eerie Publications, I'm not talking about Eerie magazine from Warren. That's a whole different thing. But if it's Eerie Publications, those are those ones I just showed you, the Tales from the Tomb, Weird, all those. Here's Nightmare, another Skywald publication. See, they cranked out all these magazines. They had Psycho, they had Scream, they had Nightmare. So they were putting out just as many magazines as Warren was. And I'm sure he wasn't too thrilled. Oh, and then when Atlas Seaboard started for a year, they put out their own Weird Tales of the Macabre. It was only around for a little bit. Here's the second issue. I think there were only 2 issues. So and I'm not showing you the Marvel ones. Marvel had a whole line of monster magazines too. So all of a sudden Warren was competing with Marvel that had Savage Tales, Savage Sword of Conan. They had Dracula Lives, Vampire Tales. They had Haunt of Horror. They had Tales of the Zombie. They had Crazy. Man, what am I forgetting? Marvel Preview. Vampire Lives, Vampire Tales, Dracula Lives. Oh, Monsters Unleashed. They had tons of horror magazines out, and then they did Unknown Worlds of Science Fiction. Marvel flooded the market with black and white comic magazines. Then there was Skywald doing Psycho, Scream, and Nightmare. And then but Warren was, you know, the original that was, even though he started by copying EC. Here's Cracked. This is from the 60s though, doing For Monsters Only, which has it's a combination of famous monsters, and see, it's a lot of famous monster style articles about, and then it's got comics. So For Monsters Only was like a combination of creepy and famous monsters that Cracked put out. So there was competition in the 60s too. Another thing Marvel did is they Stan Lee hired these underground artists to do this book comics